Oh God, the child's been poisoned. The doctor's voice cracked through the emergency room like a bullet fired in a church. Only moments earlier, Maya had barreled through the doors of Westlake Medical Center, sweat soaking her back, fear choking her lungs. She'd thrown cash at the taxi driver without counting and screamed for help before the wheels even stopped. Her hands still shook from holding Emily's tiny body, which had seized and gone cold just minutes ago in the middle of brunch. Maya had worked at the Amber Grove for 3 years. She'd served senators, CEOs, and once even a Grammy winner, but none of that mattered now. All that mattered was the child in her arms gasping, blue-lipped, unresponsive. Now, as the word poisoned echoed from the doctor's mouth, Maya felt her knees wobble. Her throat closed. Poisoned? It didn't make sense. Emily had just been laughing, had just drawn a smiley face in jelly on her toast. The ER doors burst open again. Alexander Brooks stormed in like a hurricane made of rage and tailored wool, 6 feet of fury in a charcoal suit, tie crooked, his eyes black with disbelief. His security detail flanked him but dared not step ahead. And then he saw her, Maya, holding his daughter. He charged. "You filthy bitch," he shouted. "What did you do?" Before Maya could speak, his fist hit her face. She staggered, barely catching herself against a gurney. "Please, I didn't." Another blow landed on her shoulder, then her ribs. Sharp pain exploded through her side. Maya gasped. "You think you can touch my daughter with those hands?" Alexander roared. "You think someone like you belongs anywhere near her?" His hand struck again, open-palmed this time, across her cheek, leaving a welt. The security guards stood frozen. The nurses were too stunned to move. Maya sank to her knees, arms up. Her voice cracked in desperation. "Please, I swear I only helped. I didn't hurt her, please don't." Alexander kicked at her leg. "Liar, dirty liar. I should have known better than to let one of you near her." Maya was sobbing now, shielding her face, blood running from her lip. "I didn't poison her, I just wanted to save her. She was dying. I didn't think I just ran." "You want sympathy now?" Alexander sneered, voice like gravel. "Crawling and crying like a dog, that's what you are." "No, I'm not. Maya could barely breathe through the pain and humiliation. Suddenly, a blur of motion broke the moment. "Get off her, man," a deep voice shouted. Malcolm, Maya's coworker. A tall black man in a brown delivery jacket, breathless from running. He grabbed Alexander by the shoulder and yanked him backward. "She didn't do anything," Malcolm yelled. "She saved that girl. I was there. I saw her." Alexander wheeled around, eyes wild. "You think I care what you saw? You two planned this together?" "We what?" Malcolm stepped between them, fists clenched. "Are you insane? She risked her life running through traffic to get your daughter here. You're beating up the only person who gave a damn." "Shut your mouth," Alexander snapped. "2 rats in the same sewer. I swear, when I come back, this girl's gonna answer for what she did." With that, he turned and stormed out, his voice trailing behind him. "I'll make sure she never works in this city again." Silence dropped like a stone. Maya was still on the floor, shaking, face streaked with blood and tears. Her lip had split, her cheek was swelling, and her uniform was soaked in Emily's sweat and her own pain. Malcolm knelt beside her. "Maya, hey, you okay? If you feel for the character, give this video a like and comment where you're watching from. You might be surprised to find others nearby watching along with you." She couldn't answer. The only thing she could do was whisper, over and over. "I didn't hurt her. I didn't hurt her. I didn't." Malcolm held her, gently, like a brother would. He looked around at the ER staff, who were now trying to pretend they hadn't seen what they'd just witnessed. No one stopped him. No one helped. In the hallway, a nurse wheeled Emily through swinging doors, her tiny body hooked to monitors, still unconscious. The doctor followed, still holding the tox screen report in a trembling hand. Maya's head lifted slightly. "Poisoned," she murmured again. Her heart thundered in her ears. Why would anyone poison a 5-year-old? She didn't know the answer, but someone else intended to find out. Later that night, Malcolm stood in the alley behind the Amber Grove, phone to his ear, a notebook in hand. He had spent hours replaying every moment of that morning: who touched what, who came near Emily, who had access to her food. "I don't care if I have to check every damn delivery slip," he muttered. "Someone tried to hurt that little girl. and I'll be damned if they let Maya take the fall for it. On the other end of the line, his cousin Marcus, a freelance IT tech, agreed to pull security footage from the restaurant. "This ain't over," Malcolm said quietly, staring up at the Chicago skyline, jaw tight. Not by a long shot. He knew the truth was out there hiding behind white collars, locked doors, and press releases, and he was going to find it, no matter what it cost. The scent of antiseptic still clung to Maya's skin like shame she couldn't wash off. She sat stiffly on a narrow cot in the hospital's side room, bandaged and bruised, heart pounding like it hadn't gotten the message that the attack was over. Her hands trembled in her lap. Across the room, Malcolm paced like a panther in a cage, phone glued to his ear, laptop open on the tray table. He had skipped work, ignored texts. He only had one mission now: clear Maya's name, find the truth, make someone pay. He paused mid-step. "I got it," he muttered. Maya looked up, eyes rimmed red from tears and sleeplessness. Malcolm turned the screen toward her. Frozen on the footage was a face she recognized. "Wait, that's..." "Her name's Vanessa Cole," Malcolm said grimly. "Alexander Brooks's executive assistant. Been working for him 6 years. Trusted, discreet, never made waves." Maya's brows knitted. "She was there that morning?" Malcolm nodded. "Security cam from the alley. She entered the back of the restaurant through the employee entrance. No reason for her to be there, she's not part of the service staff." He clicked to the next still image. Vanessa, leaning into the prep counter. A small vial in her hand, slipping it into a pouch. Moments later, the same pouch found its way into Kara's apron, the waitress who delivered Emily's dish. Malcolm's voice turned steel hard. She used Kara to do her dirty work. Smart, layers of distance. But she got careless. Maya's stomach flipped. Why? Why would someone so close to him? Malcolm closed the laptop. "That's what I'm about to find out." The Brooks Holdings skyscraper cut into the Chicago skyline like a glass dagger. Inside, Alexander Brooks stood with his back to the floor-to-ceiling window, whiskey glass in hand. The city below moved in orderly chaos, as it always had. But his world felt anything but. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. His daughter was still in ICU, and the image of Maya bloodied and shaking kept interrupting his thoughts like a ghost he didn't want to face. He had overreacted. Maybe even... No time for doubt. A sharp knock interrupted his spiral. Malcolm stepped inside, flanked by security. "Mr. Brooks," the guard announced. "This man insisted he had information about your daughter's case. Should we?" "I'll hear him," Alexander said, waving a hand. "Alone." Malcolm stepped forward, eyes steady. "I'm here about Maya Williams." "Oh." Alexander's jaw tightened. "You're her friend. I'm her witness. And today, I'm your reckoning." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Is that a threat?" "No," Malcolm said, pulling out a USB drive. "It's proof." He slid it onto the desk. "Security footage, witness statements, and a timeline that doesn't lie. Your assistant Vanessa Cole was in the restaurant. She planted something. Something that ended up in your daughter's meal." Alexander's face froze. "That's absurd." No," Malcolm said, voice sharp. "What's absurd is beating an innocent black woman unconscious in front of nurses and cops because you couldn't imagine someone else could be guilty." Alexander stood, face flushed. "Vanessa has worked with me for years. She..." Malcolm didn't flinch. "Lost a child. 6 years ago. Car accident. Hit and run. The driver? One of your company's execs. Got off with a suspended sentence. Thanks to your lawyers." The room fell silent. Malcolm dropped a folder on the table. "She buried her son while you buried the truth. You moved on." "She didn't." Alexander's hands curled into fists. "Bring her in." 10 minutes later, Vanessa Cole entered the office, heels clicking on the marble like knives on bone. She wore her usual calm expression, composed, unreadable. But when she saw Malcolm and the folder on the table, her breath caught. "Sir?" she asked. Alexander gestured at the screen. "Explain this." The footage played, her slipping something into Kara's pouch. The exchange. The food delivery. Emily's collapse. Vanessa turned pale. "That's not what it looks like." Malcolm cut in. "Save it. I got enough to take this to the cops right now." but I figured you might want to do something rare in this building, tell the truth. Vanessa swallowed. Her composure cracked. He was supposed to get sick. Just a scare. Just something to make him feel what I felt. Her voice shook now. 6 years ago, I was at the courthouse alone, watching that man's lawyer reduce my son's life to a tragedy of circumstances. No jail, no remorse. You stood there, stone-faced, like it was a business transaction. You took my boy. Alexander's face twisted. So you tried to take mine? No, she said, eyes wide. Not take. I wanted you to feel it. That sharp, cold terror, the helplessness. For once in your life, I wanted you to hurt. Silence. Then Alexander asked, quieter than before. Why, Emily? She's innocent. Vanessa's eyes welled with tears. So was my son. An hour later, Maya sat in the hospital lobby with her head low, thinking the worst hadn't yet come. Then Alexander Brooks appeared. Not with police, not with press, just himself. He approached slowly, hands open, voice low. Maya, she stood defensively. What now? You gonna finish what you started? He flinched. Number I came to say I was wrong. She stared at him, disbelieving. I believed the worst because I saw your skin before your heart, he said, voice strained. And I nearly destroyed someone who saved my daughter. Maya swallowed hard. You did destroy me. He nodded slowly. Then let me start fixing it. She didn't say anything, just watched as he took out a card his lawyers and placed it on the table. You're free, no charges. I'll make a statement publicly, and I'll pay whatever restitution is needed. No. Maya didn't pick up the card. Tell your daughter I hope she gets better, she said quietly. And tell her, I never stopped caring. Alexander nodded once, then left her there, in the lobby's stillness, where for the first time in days, Maya could finally breathe. Maya didn't go home that night. She couldn't. The walls of her apartment would only echo back the screams in her head, the sound of fists landing, of words that cut deeper than bruises. So instead, she stayed on the couch in Malcolm's sister's apartment, wrapped in an old quilt, watching the city lights flicker through the blinds. She hadn't spoken much since Alexander Brooks's apology. His words had been unexpected, quiet, strained, almost human. But the apology hadn't erased what happened. It hadn't erased the humiliation, or the blood. What did you say to a man who nearly broke you? At least Emily was stable now. That's what Malcolm had told her. The child would recover. Her body had flushed out the toxin, and the doctors believed there'd be no permanent damage. A miracle. And still, somewhere deep in Maya's chest, guilt simmered like coals that wouldn't cool. She'd held that little girl, had watched her tiny chest rise and fall like a wounded bird's, and she had been punished for trying to save her. Was this what it meant to be seen? The next morning, Maya woke to the smell of pancakes and the soft rhythm of jazz on the radio. Malcolm stood in the kitchen, flipping batter like a man who'd done it 1,000 Sundays. He didn't say good morning, didn't offer empty comfort, just slid a plate in front of her with syrup and butter and sat across the table. You ever think about quitting? He asked, not looking up. She stared at the food. Quitting what? Life, this city, the fight. Maya pushed the syrup in slow circles. Every day. He nodded. Me too. But we don't. No, she said softly. We don't. Malcolm took a bite of pancake, chewed thoughtfully, then set his fork down. I was thinking. This doesn't have to end with an apology. Maya looked up. What do you mean? I mean, people saw what happened. There's footage. There's proof. You want to disappear, I'll understand. But if you want to speak, want to be heard, this is your chance. Maya's breath caught. The idea terrified her. You want me to go on camera? I want you to take back your voice. She looked away. I don't know if I have the strength for that. You don't need strength, Malcolm said. You need truth. Meanwhile, across town, Alexander Brooks sat in a glass-walled conference room, surrounded by silence. Vanessa Cole was gone, fired, disgraced. His lawyers were scrambling to prepare statements for the press. He hadn't touched his coffee. His phone buzzed. A message from his private PR team. Public pressure rising. Civil rights advocates demanding a statement. Maya Williams's name trending. He swiped away the message. Maya. He couldn't stop seeing her eyes when she looked at him after the attack. Not fear, not just pain. It was betrayal. She had risked everything for his daughter, and he had answered her with fists. What kind of man did that make him? Later that afternoon, Maya stood outside the Amber Grove. The restaurant was quiet now, closed for maintenance. A sign on the door rattled in the wind. She stared at the door for a long time. "I was proud to work here," she whispered, "even when I was just background noise." Malcolm stood beside her, arms crossed. "You weren't background. You were the only reason that place had soul." She didn't reply, just walked to the front steps, sat down, and pulled out a notepad from her bag. "What's that?" he asked. "My statement," she said. "I've been writing it all night." Malcolm's eyes softened. "You ready?" She looked up at him, the bruises on her face still fading, but her voice calm. "Not really," she said, "but I'm doing it anyway." The next day, Maya appeared on a local radio show for working-class voices in Chicago. The host, a middle-aged black woman named Dee, gave her space. No hard questions, just room to speak. Maya's voice trembled at first, but she pushed through. "I never thought someone like me would end up at the center of a headline," she said into the mic. "I'm not a celebrity. I'm not an activist. I serve food. I clean tables. I smile when people ignore me. But last week, I ran through traffic to save a little girl's life. I didn't think I just moved. I held her. I begged strangers for help. And when her father saw me, all he saw was my skin." The studio was silent. I was called names I won't repeat here. I was beaten. I was blamed. And I was innocent. But what hurts most isn't the bruises. It's knowing that even when we do everything right, they'll still find a reason to see us as the enemy. Dee leaned in. "And what do you want people to know now?" Maya took a breath. "That we're not invisible. That our pain matters. That sometimes the people who save your children look nothing like you, and maybe that's the point. Maybe healing starts with listening to the people you fear." The interview went viral. By evening, Number Justice for Maya was trending. Celebrities reposted her words. Civil rights leaders called for investigations. Donations poured into a GoFundMe account Malcolm had set up without telling her. Alexander Brooks released a formal video apology the next morning. Suit, tie, soft voice. "I failed, Maya Williams. I let fear and bias cloud my judgment, and for that, I am deeply sorry. It helped, but it didn't fix everything. Some scars heal, others stay as warnings." That night, Maya stood in Emily's hospital room for the first time since that awful day. The child was awake now, small and quiet, eyes filled with light again. "Maya," she whispered, smiling weakly. Maya's chest ached with emotion. "Hey, sweetheart." Emily reached out, and Maya took her hand. "I missed you," the girl said. "I missed you too." Behind them, Alexander stood by the doorway. He said nothing. He just watched, silent, humbled. He knew now words were a start, but presence was the real apology. Maya didn't need revenge. She'd gotten something more powerful. The truth. And the last word, the morning after Maya's radio interview, the city awoke different. Not louder, not more violent, but more attentive, like a collective breath had been held, and now, finally, people were starting to listen. For Maya, that realization struck hard as she walked past a coffee shop near the Red Line. A white woman in her 60s looked up from her paper, recognized her, and didn't turn away. She gave a small nod. Just a nod. But in Maya's world, that nod carried decades of silence cracking open. Malcolm walked beside her, his steps relaxed but eyes still scanning the street like he expected trouble. "You're everywhere now," he said, nudging her gently. "I saw a church billboard quoting you." Maya gave a dry smile. "I didn't sign up to be a symbol." "Doesn't matter," Malcolm said. "The fire found you." They stopped in front of a bookstore where a hand-painted sign on the window read, "We stand with Maya." She stared at it for a long moment. "It still doesn't feel real." Malcolm glanced at his phone. "Well, it's about to get more real. You got an invitation." He handed her the screen. "From Chicago Civic Council. Subject, Panel Invitation Justice in the Workplace. We'd be honored if Miss Maya Williams could join our upcoming panel discussion to share her experience and insights on systemic bias and justice." Maya blinked. "They want me to talk?" "You already are talking," Malcolm said. Now they want to listen. Real rooms, real people. Maya exhaled. A part of her still wanted to run. But something deeper said, stay, speak, stand. That same afternoon, Vanessa Cole sat alone in a holding cell at the 7th District Precinct. Her lawyer had left. The deal was still being negotiated, but her confession captured on audio, corroborated by footage, had left little wiggle room. A detective stood outside the glass, arms folded. You're the most polite saboteur we've ever booked. Vanessa didn't respond. She wasn't polite. She was tired. You think Brooks will press full charges? The officer asked. He doesn't seem like the merciful type. Vanessa finally looked up. He's not. But he has a daughter now. Maybe he'll think twice. Oh. Her voice didn't carry bitterness anymore. Only resignation. Maybe, she added, this will be the one time he learns something the hard way. Meanwhile, at Brooks Holdings, Alexander sat in the corner office once more, this time without his armor. No suit jacket, no tie, just an open collar and a head full of questions. His chief of communications entered with a folder. Sir, more media requests. Also, an inquiry from the Equal Rights Commission. He waved her off. Put it on the desk. She hesitated. Sir, respectfully, this isn't going away. People are calling for a workplace audit. HR is panicking. There are rumors. He met her eyes. Let them panic. Let them look. If we're guilty of more than I thought, then maybe it's time we faced it. She studied him for a moment. You're changing. He looked past her, toward the window. Maybe I'm just waking up. 2 days later, Maya arrived at the civic panel in a navy blue blazer that Malcolm's sister had lent her. The auditorium was packed. Local leaders, educators, activists, even a handful of city officials in crisp suits. She sat between two speakers, a retired judge and a union organizer. Her heart raced. This wasn't a radio booth. This was public. Real eyes, real scrutiny. The moderator introduced her last. And finally, we have Maya Williams, a restaurant server whose recent act of courage has sparked national dialogue on race, justice, and accountability. Applause rose. Maya gripped the edges of her seat. When her turn came to speak, she took a breath and leaned into the mic. I didn't set out to change anything, she began. I just saw a little girl in danger, and I ran. I didn't think about race, or reputation, or cameras. I thought about life, her life. But the world didn't care about that. The world cared about who I was, or rather, who I looked like. And for a moment too long, a moment that was all they needed to assume the worst. She scanned the crowd. Some leaned forward, others nodded slowly. We keep telling ourselves this country is better now. But better for who? She asked, her voice gaining power. Because the bruises on my face said otherwise. The silence in that hospital said otherwise. And if not for the one man who stood up for me, I might still be sitting in a cell labeled guilty because of my skin. She paused, letting the words settle. But I'm not angry anymore, she continued. I'm awake, and I want you to be, too. Justice isn't a court date. It's a mindset. A choice. Every day. Applause erupted longer this time. Not polite. Genuine. After the panel, Maya stood in the hallway near the exits, drained but lighter. She shook hands, thanked people, smiled when older women told her she reminded them of how we used to fight back in the 60 seconds. Then, a familiar figure approached. Alexander. No cameras, no entourage, just a man in a dark coat, looking smaller than she remembered. I watched the whole thing, he said. Maya folded her arms. I'm not here to cause a scene, he added quickly. I just wanted to say that your voice was louder than anything I've built. And for the first time in a long time, I'm listening. Maya studied him. Then do something with what you heard. I will, he said. Vanessa's being charged, but I'm pushing for reform inside my company too. Mandatory equity training, a board-level audit. It's late, but it's happening. Maya gave a small nod. Start there. He looked at her for a moment, then extended his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. not out of forgiveness, but out of power. Her power. That night, Maya sat on the rooftop of Malcolm's apartment building, legs crossed, a blanket wrapped around her. The city spread below like a map of 1,000 new paths. Malcolm handed her a cup of hot tea. "You did good today," he said. "I did what I had to." They sat in silence for a long time. Then Maya looked up at the stars. "Maybe my pain was the cost," she said softly, "but I'm not paying it in silence." Malcolm raised his cup. "To truth." "To truth," she echoed. And for the first time in weeks, Maya smiled not because she was healed, but because she was heard. The following week passed in fragments, interviews, phone calls, messages from strangers, and long, quiet hours Maya spent sitting in her room, trying to remember who she was before everything changed. She still worked at Amber Grove, or, at least, what was left of it. The restaurant had reopened, but under new management. The original owners, nervous from the PR fallout, had sold their stake. Maya had been offered a choice: come back with a promotion or walk away with a full severance and glowing recommendations. She chose to return not for the paycheck, but for something else. She refused to be pushed out of a place she had once loved. Her first night back, everything felt different. Staff members who once ignored her now nodded politely. One even held the door for her, as if trying to rewrite their past apathy. The kitchen buzzed softer. Kara, the waitress, unknowingly used in the poisoning, avoided eye contact, but Maya didn't hold it against her. They were all caught in someone else's game. By the time the dinner rush ended, Maya stood outside the back exit, leaning against the cold brick wall, watching her breath rise in the chill of early evening. Malcolm stepped out beside her, hands in his pockets. "You holding up?" Maya shrugged. "It's strange. Being back feels like walking through a story that already ended." "It didn't end," Malcolm said. "It just turned a corner." She looked at him. "You're good at saying the right thing." He chuckled. "I just know how to listen first." She smiled faintly, then her expression shifted, thoughtful. "You ever wonder if the world only hears us when something terrible happens?" "All the time," he said. "But maybe, sometimes that's how the door cracks open, just enough to push it wide." That same night, in a quiet suburb 30 minutes outside the city, Alexander Brooks tucked Emily into bed. Her cheeks were pink again. Her laughter had returned, soft and airy like a wind chime. She didn't remember the worst of it, just flashes, like bad dreams that couldn't quite settle into place. "Daddy?" she asked, looking up at him. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you still mad at Miss Maya?" Alexander blinked. "No," he said gently. "I was never mad at her. I just didn't understand what was happening." Emily nodded, small fingers gripping her blanket. She was nice. She was brave. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat. "Yes," he said, "she was." And then, with the kind of simplicity only a child could offer, Emily whispered, "Then you should tell people that she saved me, too." Alexander leaned forward, kissed her forehead, and promised, "I will." The next morning, Maya received an unexpected delivery at the restaurant. It wasn't flowers or a press packet. It was a handwritten letter, tucked inside a navy blue envelope bearing the Brooks Holdings insignia. She opened it slowly. "Maya, words feel small compared to what you endured. But I need to offer them anyway. You saved my daughter. You stood in the fire while I added fuel. And still, you protected her. That is the measure of a person's character, not how they act when praised, but how they carry themselves when punished for doing right. I want the world to know the truth, not just about what happened, but about who you are. I've arranged for a community scholarship fund to be started in your name, focused on training and promoting hospitality workers of color into leadership. I hope it's a beginning, not redemption, just responsibility. A. B." Maya read it twice. She didn't cry. She just folded the letter, slipped it into her apron pocket, and went back to work. But beneath the surface, not everyone was ready to let go. That evening, Malcolm sat at his desk scrolling through social media when a message popped into his inbox. No name, just a username, Graywall, 773. It read, "You think the truth came out. You think the story's over, but you only saw what they let you see. The rot goes deeper. Dig further. Start with Vanessa's old email logs." She wasn't working alone. Malcolm stared at the screen, pulse quickening. He replied, "Who are you? What are you talking about? But the account had already disappeared. He leaned back, mind spinning. The assistant had confessed. The story had settled. The apology had been made. But what if someone else had helped her? What if Vanessa hadn't acted alone? Meanwhile, Maya closed the restaurant late that night and walked home through the quieter side of the city. The streets were wet with rain, shimmering under the street lamps. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of her footsteps. She passed a mural newly painted on the side of a community center. An abstract depiction of a woman standing tall amidst a storm of voices. No name on it. But Maya paused. It felt like a reflection, not of who she had been, but of who she was becoming. As she turned the corner toward her apartment, her phone buzzed. It was Malcolm. She answered. "Hey," he said. "I need to talk to you. Something's come up. I think this isn't over." Maya's breath caught. Of course it wasn't. Truth always left shadows behind. And someone, somewhere, still didn't want the light to shine too far. Maya arrived at Malcolm's apartment just before midnight, jacket zipped up against the fall chill, eyes clouded with a tension she hadn't felt since the night Emily collapsed in her arms. The city was quiet, the way it always was when something was about to break loose, not in sound, but in truth. Malcolm was already pacing when she entered, his laptop open on the table and 3 empty coffee mugs lined up like fallen soldiers. The apartment smelled of burnt toast and old carpet, but Maya barely noticed. His face said enough. "You said this wasn't over," she said, pulling off her coat. "Talk to me." Malcolm nodded toward the screen. "Someone messaged me anonymously. Claimed Vanessa Cole wasn't acting alone." Maya stiffened, but she confessed. "I know." But the message pointed to her corporate emails, said there's something deeper in there. Like someone inside the company may have helped her or worse encouraged it. Maya frowned. Why would anyone do that? The plan already nearly killed a 5-year-old. Malcolm's jaw clenched. Politics, power, revenge. Sometimes people light fires just to watch who gets burned. He turned the laptop so she could see. On the screen was an archive he had quietly pulled from a whistleblower forum, a copy of internal communications leaked from Brooks Holdings after the scandal broke. "There's hundreds of pages," he said. I filtered keywords. Vanessa. Incident. Risk. And containment. Containment? Maya repeated. "Look at this thread." He opened an email chain between Vanessa and a name neither of them recognized. Kingsley Senior Strategy Advisor, listed only in corporate charts, never public-facing. In the exchange, Vanessa had written, "Should we proceed with Phase 2? After what happened at Amber Grove, I don't think Brooks suspects anything yet. But the girl surviving complicates things." Kingsley had replied, "Proceed with caution. His distraction is our advantage. Keep pressure on Maya Williams. She's becoming a liability." Maya stared at the screen, heart pounding. They were watching me? They were planning something else, Malcolm said. "Phase 2? Jesus," Maya whispered. "This goes way past me, way past Vanessa. And if they were willing to poison a child to trigger Brooks emotionally," Malcolm added, "what do you think they're willing to do to someone like you, someone who survived it and spoke up?" Maya slowly sat down, her hands trembling. Why would this Kingsley person target Brooks in the first place? What's the motive? Malcolm pulled up another file, an internal risk report labeled Confidential, Q3 Exposure and Leverage. In it was a breakdown of multiple lawsuits, hush agreements, and a proposed succession contingency plan that involved quietly forcing Brooks into early resignation due to emotional instability following a public scandal. Kingsley was engineering a takedown, Malcolm said. Vanessa was a pawn. You were the kindling. Maya stared at the screen, silent. And then, something in her eyes hardened. "They tried to ruin my life," she said, "but what they really feared was my voice." The next morning, Maya stood outside a federal building downtown. Coat buttoned tight, hair tied back, face calm but resolute. Malcolm stood beside her, holding a flash drive like it was a grenade. They walked past security, up to the 4th floor, and into an office with a plaque that read, Office of Corporate Ethics and Investigations. They had an appointment. An agent greeted them, late 40s, black woman, firm handshake, sharp eyes. "Miss Williams, Mr. Carter, come in." Inside the glass-walled room, Maya laid out everything. The message from the anonymous user, The email leaks, the internal documents, the Kingsley connection. Malcolm supplied the drive. The agent took notes without interruption. When Maya finished, she looked the woman in the eye. "I'm not coming here for revenge. I want to know if the system that failed me is willing to fix itself." The agent nodded slowly. "We'll open a case." "And Miss Williams?" "Yes. If what you're saying is true, you're not just a witness now." Maya nodded. "I understand. You're a whistleblower." That night, news began to circulate. Another investigation, but this time, it wasn't about what Maya had done. It was about what had been done to her. Alexander Brooks watched the report from his penthouse apartment. Whiskey untouched on the table beside him. His daughter was asleep. His company, it seemed, was under siege again, but from within. And somehow, the woman he once tried to destroy was now the one pulling the thread on the truth. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. He thought about Maya, her quiet strength, her refusal to disappear, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't angry. He was ashamed. 3 days later, a manila envelope arrived at Malcolm's apartment. No return address. Inside, printed photographs. One showed Vanessa Cole speaking with D. Kingsley in a downtown parking garage timestamped 2 weeks before the Amber Grove incident. Another showed Kingsley entering a building marked Carlyle Strategy Group, a consultancy known for political sabotage and crisis engineering. At the bottom of the envelope was a note. "You open the door, now kick it in. Graywall, 773. Malcolm handed the photos to Maya. She stared at them, then at him. "We're not safe, are we?" "No," he said. "But we're not alone either." Later that night, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at the bruises that had long faded, but still marked her somewhere deeper. She touched her cheek, closed her eyes. She had been a victim, then a witness, then a symbol. Now, she was becoming something else entirely. A storm they didn't see coming, and it had only just begun. The early morning fog clung to the sidewalks like a warning. Maya walked with her hood up, headphones in, hands buried in the pockets of her denim jacket. The world around her was beginning to shift. She could feel it in the way strangers looked longer than they used to, in how doors opened for her now, but with hesitation, like people weren't sure if they admired her or feared the storm following in her wake. Inside, she still felt fractured, but each step she took through the city reminded her. She was still walking, still standing. When she reached the cafe near Malcolm's place, he was already there, seated by the window with a file spread across the table. He was hunched forward, focused, jaw tight. Maya slid into the seat opposite him. "You haven't slept." "Not really," Malcolm admitted. Graywall sent another message. He handed over his phone. Maya read. "Kingsley's moving money. Cayman accounts. Preparing for fallout. You've got a window, maybe a week before he disappears completely. Go to the basement archive at Brooks Holdings. You'll find a box marked B47, internal memo cleanup. Inside, the smoking gun." Maya blinked. "Basement archive? That's secure. Restricted access." Malcolm nodded. "But I pulled employee ID logs. Guess who has clearance?" "Don't say me." "No," he smirked. "Me, I used to do freelance it for one of Brooks's satellite offices. I still have a ghost-level badge never revoked." Maya stared. "You're telling me we break into a corporate archive?" Malcolm leaned back, arms crossed. "I'm telling you we walk in like we belong. 2 professionals. Quick in and out. And we expose this thing before it disappears into some offshore vault." Maya exhaled slowly. "You've been watching too many spy thrillers." "No," he said, voice suddenly serious. "I've been watching you get crushed, and I'm not letting them bury this." "Lou." 2 nights later, Maya stood with Malcolm outside the Brooks Holdings corporate tower. It was nearly midnight. The streets were empty. Malcolm swiped the keycard at the service entrance. The red light blinked, then turned green. They slipped inside. The hallway smelled of printer toner and carpet cleaner. The fluorescent lights hummed above them like the breath of something sleeping. "I can't believe we're doing this," Maya whispered. "Me neither," Malcolm said. "But if that file has what I think it does." They descended the stairs 2 floors below ground. Basement level 2. The archives. Rows upon rows of metal shelves stretched into shadow. Boxes labeled with letters and numbers. organized by fiscal quarters and scandal-laced euphemisms like Public Relations Incident A. Malcolm scanned the rows. There, he pointed, B47. Maya followed him down the aisle, heart racing. The box was wedged between dusty files. Malcolm pulled it free and opened it on a table. Inside, dozens of documents. One envelope caught Maya's eye. She opened it and froze. "Malcolm," she said, voice low, "look at this." It was a memo dated 8 months ago. Subject: Narrative Control Measures. Employee Exposure. It detailed a planned strategy to neutralize employees deemed reputational risks. It listed several names, 2 of which Maya recognized as former co-workers who had suddenly vanished. One was a single mother, the other a line cook who had tried to unionize. Maya's name was at the bottom of the list. Next to it, high emotional leverage. Use controlled incident to discredit and remove. Malcolm stared at the page, rage rising in his eyes. "They planned to ruin you before the poisoning." "This wasn't an accident," Maya whispered. "They wanted me gone." She pulled out another file. This one included payment logs from a consulting firm, Carlyle Strategy Group, the same place Kingsley was linked to. Payments listed as Crisis Orchestration, Tier 2. "I need to get these to the Ethics Commission," Maya said. "Now." But as they turned to leave, they heard it. A click, then a voice behind them. "You shouldn't be here." They turned slowly. Kingsley stood at the end of the aisle, flanked by a private security guard. A looked calm, too calm. "I admire the initiative," he said. "Really, I do. But you're walking into a game you don't understand." Maya held the file to her chest. "I understand more than enough." Kingsley stepped forward. "You think you'll leak that to the press? Make me the villain? You're just another angry employee with a vendetta. And your friend?" He glanced at Malcolm, an ex-con with a tech obsession. "You set up a woman to take the fall for a child's poisoning," Malcolm snapped. "You weaponized trauma to manipulate a man's legacy." "I harnessed the truth," Kingsley replied. "Brooks was unstable. The board needed a reason to push him out. Vanessa gave me the opening. Her rage was authentic. I simply helped direct it." "You destroyed lives," Maya said. "I guided outcomes," Kingsley corrected. "Don't confuse the two." Maya took a step forward, holding the file out. "This ends tonight." Kingsley smirked. "Number it doesn't." He gave a subtle nod to the guard who reached into his jacket. Maya's heart leapt. But before he could draw, a second figure emerged from the shadows behind Kingsley. Alexander Brooks. "Put the gun away," he said. Everyone froze. Alexander's face was grim. "I've been listening for 5 minutes." Kingsley turned shocked. I came to find answers," Brooks said. "I found betrayal." He looked at Maya. "I had a gut feeling. Something didn't sit right. I followed it. I didn't expect to find you here, but I'm glad I did." He turned back to Kingsley. "You're done." Kingsley's voice sharpened. "You don't have that power anymore." Alexander stepped forward. "Maybe not. But she does." He looked at Maya. "She's the one people believe now." And in that moment, Maya understood. The truth wasn't in her hands, it was hers. And no one could take it back. Not anymore. The police arrived 17 minutes later. Kingsley was handcuffed with a clenched jaw and silent eyes. His private security man, once so eager to draw a weapon, now sat on the ground, hands behind his head, looking anywhere but at Maya. Maya stood off to the side, arms still wrapped around the file folder like it was an infant in need of protection. Her breath was shallow. She hadn't realized how tight her chest was until the flashing red and blue lights had filled the basement and replaced the cold hum of fluorescent bulbs with something human, something real. Alexander Brooks hadn't said much since confronting Kingsley. He simply stood, shoulders squared, eyes cold. The kind of cold that came from shame, not anger. One of the officers approached Maya. "Ma'am, would you be willing to give a statement?" Maya nodded. "Yes, I'll give you everything." Malcolm leaned against a shelf nearby, eyes still darting, adrenaline refusing to settle. "They were going to make you disappear," he muttered. "Like you were a glitch in the program." Maya didn't respond. She didn't have to. Because now, the program was crashing. By sunrise, headlines were already hitting the local news. Whistleblower breaks corporate cover-up, attempted sabotage at Brooks Holdings exposed. Former advisor arrested in plot involving child poisoning scandal. Maya Williams, the voice that wouldn't stay silent. The story spread faster than even Maya imagined. Within 24 hours, the Department of Justice announced it was opening a broader inquiry into private consulting firms and corporate interference in workplace retaliation. Carlyle Strategy Group's website went dark. Anonymous sources leaked that Kingsley had operated similar containment operations for other high-profile clients, none of whom were commenting now. Maya watched the coverage from Malcolm's living room, feet tucked under her, hands curled around a chipped coffee mug that never seemed to get warm enough. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt exhausted. "You're not used to the noise, are you?" Malcolm asked, settling next to her. Maya shook her head. "I'm used to being invisible. Now everyone's watching, and I keep thinking, what if I mess it up?" "You didn't mess up," he said. "You survived." "No. That's what scares them, isn't it?" she whispered. "That I lived, that I didn't break." "That you spoke," Malcolm corrected. "That you kept speaking." Maya leaned her head against the back of the couch, eyes closed. "I just wanted to work, Mal. To serve tables, stack plates, save tips for a better life. Not this." "But this chose you," he said gently, "and you didn't run." Later that afternoon, a press conference was called in front of City Hall. Alexander Brooks stepped behind the podium, not flanked by lawyers or board members this time, but standing alone. His hair was grayer than a month ago, his posture less towering. He wasn't there as a titan of industry. He was there as a father. "As many of you know," he began, "my daughter Emily was poisoned due to an act of calculated manipulation orchestrated by individuals I once trusted. But this isn't just about a child suffering. It's about the systems that allowed such cruelty to go unchecked." It paused. Cameras clicked. "And more importantly, it's about Maya Williams." The crowd quieted. "She saved my daughter's life. She was beaten, shamed, and accused while doing so. And still, she stood. She spoke. She refused to disappear, even when powerful people tried to erase her." He looked down for a moment, voice softening. "I failed her, not just as a man, but as a symbol of every door that stayed closed to women like her, to voices like hers." Then he looked straight into the lens. "We must listen better. We must believe faster. And we must protect those brave enough to stand when silence is easier." That night, Maya returned home alone for the first time in weeks. Her apartment smelled faintly of lavender and dust, like it had waited patiently for her to return. She took off her coat, turned on the lamp, and stood in the center of the room just breathing. The old calendar on her wall still read the month before everything happened. She walked over, tore it down, and replaced it with the new one. A clean slate. Then she opened her laptop. Dozens of messages waited, some from strangers, some from survivors, some from companies and media outlets offering book deals or speaking tours. But one message stood out. It was from Emily, a short video clip, a child's voice. "Hi, Miss Maya. Thank you for saving me. I drew you something." The screen shifted to a crayon drawing. Maya, smiling, holding Emily's hand. Above them, in crooked letters, it read, "You're my hero." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes, not because of pain this time, because of peace. The following morning, Maya met with her new attorney, an older black woman named Clarissa Lewis, whose reputation for suing billionaires was the stuff of legend in Chicago's legal circles. "We have everything we need," Clarissa said, sliding documents across the desk. "Evidence, timeline, witnesses, a whistleblower status federally protected. You have a choice, Maya." Maya looked at the folder, then back at Clarissa. "What kind of choice?" "You can settle. Quiet payout. NDAs. They'd probably write you a check with 7 zeros today. And the other option? We file a federal civil suit against Brooks Holdings and Carlyle. Class action. You wouldn't just be suing for yourself. You'd be opening the gates for others who were silenced. Workers, women, people of color, people like you." Maya looked down at her hands. She remembered the slap, the blood, the plea for mercy. Then she remembered the applause, the mural, the child's voice saying, "You're my hero." "I don't want money," Maya said. "I want change." Clarissa smiled. "Then let's go get it." "No." As Maya stepped back into the light of the city that day, she realized something she hadn't before. She was no longer part of someone else's story. She was writing her own. And this was only the beginning. The morning of the filing was gray, not with storm clouds, but with the kind of overcast sky that blanketed everything in quiet resolve. Maya stood outside the federal courthouse wearing a simple navy blazer, her curls pulled back, her hands steady at her sides. The file in her left hand held more than just legal documents. It held proof, purpose, and pain shaped into testimony. Beside her, Clarissa Lewis was already fielding reporters. The press had shown up in full force. Boom mics, cameras, curious passers-by, everyone wanted to see the woman who was finally saying no loud enough for the whole system to hear. "You ready?" Clarissa asked as they climbed the marble steps. "No," Maya answered honestly, "but I'm going anyway." Inside, the building felt colder than it should. Security escorted them through without hassle. Even here, they were recognized. There was a weight in every step Maya took down the polished corridor, like she was walking not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been accused without evidence, punished without reason, and silenced without apology. The lawsuit, officially titled Williams versus Brooks Holdings and Carlyle Strategy Group, named 14 individuals and 2 corporate entities. It alleged conspiracy, racial discrimination, emotional trauma, obstruction of justice, and retaliatory practices. Clarissa had told her it was ambitious. Maya didn't want ambition. She wanted accountability. The court clerk stamped the papers with a resounding thud. That sound echoed in Maya's chest like a verdict not of guilt, but of transformation. Later that day, back at Amber Grove, Maya returned to work like nothing had changed. Because in some ways, nothing had. The restaurant still smelled of grilled salmon and rosemary. The host still greeted customers with the same trained smile. The same busboy Alan dropped a plate of water glasses and flushed red as he cleaned them up. But in other ways, everything had changed. Whispers followed her through the dining room now, some admiring, some suspicious, some afraid of what she might do next. And Maya had learned to let them whisper. As she cleared table 4, a man in a crisp suit caught her wrist gently. Not forcefully, not rudely. Just enough to get her attention. "You're Maya Williams, right?" She nodded slowly, unsure. "My wife and I." He gestured toward a woman seated beside him, who smiled warmly. "We watched your press conference last night. We just wanted to say thank you for being braver than most of us could be." Maya's throat tightened, but she smiled. "Thank you, sir." "No," he said, "thank you." He slipped something into her hand. It was a small card. On it, handwritten, "Justice isn't quiet. Don't let them mute you again." Maya tucked it into her apron. Later, she would tape it on her bathroom mirror. That evening, Malcolm called. "You need to see this," he said, voice low. 10 minutes later, Maya was in his apartment, staring at his laptop screen. A new video had surfaced, an old one, dated over a year before the Amber Grove incident. It had been leaked anonymously. In it, Kingsley stood in front of a boardroom, giving a presentation. "By leveraging narrative fatigue, we can desensitize public sympathy," he said. "The key is to discredit the emotional core, usually a minority subject, before it becomes a symbol. Make them unstable, make them reactive, and then label them dangerous." Malcolm paused the video. Maya said nothing for a long time. Then, softly, "They studied how to erase us. They trained for it," Malcolm replied. She closed her eyes, letting the rage roll through her, then letting it go. There would be time for that. Later. In court. In interviews. On stages where her voice was louder than their lies. "This video changes everything," Malcolm said. "You've got them cornered now." "No," Maya said. "We've got them exposed. Cornering comes later." 3 days later, Alexander Brooks held another press conference, this time not in defense, but in surrender. "I'm stepping down as CEO effective immediately," he announced. "Not because I am guilty of orchestrating this, but because I failed to see it, and that failure cost people more than I can measure." When asked about Maya, he didn't hesitate. "She showed us our blind spot," he said, "and she paid for it with blood, reputation, and peace. We owe her more than words." And when asked if he would support her lawsuit, he surprised everyone. "I won't fight it," he said. "Not anymore." That moment cracked something open in the public. For the first time, Major news anchors began naming the system, not just the individuals. A documentary team reached out. Universities offered to archive Maya's case as a study in modern civil justice. A civil rights organization invited her to be their keynote speaker. Maya said no to most of them. She wasn't ready to be a symbol. She was still learning how to be a woman who survived. But one invitation she accepted, a panel at a local high school in South Side, where students asked hard questions and didn't flinch from hard truths. A girl in the front row, dark skin, tight braids, steel in her voice, asked, "How do you stand up for yourself when no one believes you?" Maya looked right at her. "You believe yourself first," she said. "Then you make noise until the world has no choice but to hear you." The girl didn't smile. She just nodded. That was enough. That night, Maya walked alone again. Same streets, same wind. But this time, she didn't look over her shoulder. Her phone buzzed. A text from Clarissa. "They're requesting settlement talks. This means they're scared." Another text came seconds later from Malcolm. Graywall messaged again. "They say there's one final piece left. Something buried. You ready?" Maya stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. The city pulsed around her. She typed back, "I was born ready." The email came at 3:17 a.m. Malcolm's alert pinged once soft, barely loud enough to stir him from the couch where he'd fallen asleep with his laptop on his chest. The subject line was simple, but unmistakable. "Final key, from Graywall, 773. He didn't waste time. Within seconds, the file was open. Encrypted, he cracked the first layer using the same backdoor method he'd used on the previous leaks. What appeared next made his breath catch. It wasn't just another document. It was a surveillance log, dated almost a year prior. Asset, M. Williams, flagged priority. Attached were 3 recordings. Audio. He clicked play on the first. A man's voice, Kingsley, sharp, confident. "She's too clean. No debt, no drama, no leverage. If she ever turns vocal, we'll need a trigger." Malcolm hit pause. He called Maya. She answered on the second ring, groggy. "Mal?" Graywall sent another drop, he said. "I think this is the final one. You need to hear this." An hour later, Maya sat cross-legged on Malcolm's couch, hoodie pulled tight around her neck. The city outside was still asleep, but the fire inside her was very much awake. Malcolm played the second recording. Female voice this time, Vanessa Cole. "She won't break. I've worked with her. She's steady. It'll have to be personal. Her record says she lost a brother in juvenile lockup 10 years ago. That might be a pressure point." Maya flinched. She hadn't heard her brother's name spoken aloud in years. "Pause it," she said, voice barely audible. Malcolm did. Maya stood, pacing, arms crossed. "They researched me. Dug through my life like I was a threat. Like I was prey. They built a dossier," Malcolm said. "Like intelligence work, but worse. Corporate warfare masquerading as HR. Play the last one," she said. The third recording was scratchier, like it had been captured from a hidden device. Kingsley again. "If the child survives, pivot the narrative. Paint Maya as negligent. Maybe say she was distracted, overworked, angry. Turn her into the angry black woman trope. It always lands." Subtle, but effective. Click. Silence. Maya closed her eyes, breathing through her nose. Then, "We're going public with this. Today." Malcolm nodded. By noon, Clarissa had scheduled an emergency press conference. The new evidence would not only bolster the civil suit, it would force the Department of Justice to consider criminal conspiracy charges. Maya stood at the podium this time. No more hiding behind lawyers or allies. Just her. She played the audio recordings on a speaker so that every journalist, every camera, every person watching at home could hear them with their own ears. When it ended, she stepped forward. "This is what power sounds like when it thinks you'll never talk back," she said. Cameras clicked. Microphones leaned closer. "But I am talking back. And I'm not the only one. They studied me. Stalked me. Designed a trap for me. And still, I survived. Not because I'm special, but because I refused to believe their version of who I was." Her voice wavered, but didn't break. "They thought they could reduce me to a headline. But I'm not a headline. I'm a warning. And I'm not going away." The fallout came fast. By evening, the The DOJ confirmed it was expanding the investigation to include not only Brooks Holdings and Carlyle, but 3 other Fortune 500 companies linked to similar tactics. Kingsley's lawyer withdrew from the case. Vanessa, from her prison cell, released a written statement. "I was used, but I let myself be. I was angry, and they gave me a direction. I own my part, but they trained me how to be cruel." Maya read that part twice. It didn't absolve Vanessa, but it confirmed what she'd suspected all along. This wasn't just a story about one woman's pain. It was a pattern. The next day, Alexander Brooks showed up unannounced at Amber Grove. He wasn't in a suit, just a sweater, jeans, a man who had learned the price of silence. Maya stepped out from the kitchen, unsure at first. Staff turned their heads, unsure whether to keep working or hold their breath. "I won't stay long," Brooks said quietly. "I just wanted to give you this." He handed her a leather-bound folder. Inside were notarized documents. He cleared his throat. "One of the board's final acts before my resignation was the establishment of a fund in your name. Not just scholarships, but legal defense support for whistleblowers, frontline workers, people who risk everything just to do the right thing." Maya looked down at the folder, then back at him. "I don't need charity," she said. "It's not charity," Brooks replied. "It's debt." "Oh." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Brooks added, "And I hope you'll consider joining the board that oversees it." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You want me on your board?" "No," he said. "I want you to build one. I just opened the door." That night, Maya sat on her apartment floor, surrounded by papers, clippings, letters from supporters, and notes scribbled on napkins. She thought about power, about how it worked.